no one really talks about this, but this really does make sense. But there's such a change in your levels from day to day. Blood work is a little bit iffy, and most people don't know that perimenopause actually occurs about what really helps with that neuroplasticity is there's so many distractions in our world today. Scrolling on your phone, on your computer, you're receiving all this blue light from your computer, and that's messing with your cortisol. The symptoms might be more pronounced because...
And what would those symptoms be? Today we're talking about a topic that touches millions of women, but often doesn't get the spotlight it deserves: perimenopause and menopause. These transitions can feel overwhelming physically, emotionally, and even spiritually. That's why I'm grateful to have today's guest with us. Joining me is health coach Elisha Reasor, a wellness coach specializing in women's health. We'll talk about what's really happening in the body during these transitions, how nutrition, supplements, and mindset, yes, my favorite, can help with things like energy, sleep, and mood, and the shifts that can make this chapter less about loss and more about growth. So whether you're in the middle of it, preparing for it, or simply want to understand it better for the people in your life, women especially, this conversation is packed with wisdom you won't want to miss. Take a listen. Thanks for your interest in sticking around to watch or listen to my podcast, dedicated to providing tools and resources to help you claim and live your best life. If you're loving these conversations, make sure you hit that bell to subscribe or follow and never miss an episode of the Chris Senise Podcast. Don't forget to tap the like and share it with someone who needs a little inspiration today. Let's grow this community of curious, driven minds together. You've got a lot to say about perimenopause specifically.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes, I've got some information on perimenopause and the changes that happen to you as you enter into menopause. And most people don't know that perimenopause actually occurs about 10 years, up to 10 years before menopause. So you start to experience symptoms leading up to menopause. Yeah, fun stuff.
Interesting. So let's start with, what is the typical menopausal age? Like when
I would say
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, usually between 50 and 52
Okay.
is when it happens, but some women can go into menopause earlier than that. So yeah, you should start to experience symptoms like in your 40s then, that would mean.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. And
Yeah.
and what would those symptoms be?
Yeah, one of my first symptoms was not being able to go back to sleep, like waking up at 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. and my brain is just on. And it's like, let's go. So that was my first symptom. Gosh, there's so many like little symptoms too. Like some people say itchy ears. I also, I also had frozen shoulder, which when you have a change or a decline in your estrogen, that can cause frozen shoulder. And it's just discomfort. Like just washing my hair was discomforting, putting on a jacket, putting on a shirt. And at first I thought, I shouldn't move the shoulder. I should keep it still, but actually you do want to continue to move it. So I did some acupuncture for that and, it helped. So yeah. And then, a lot of women experience like weight gain in the middle section, again, with changing hormones and just fat distribution, your ability to burn more fat becomes less and less. So you kind of tend to gain more weight, unfortunately. But there's some things you can do about it. So
That is sort of insane, because I would say that some of those symptoms most women would not associate with perimenopause or just menopause in general.
right. Yeah.
I had a frozen
Yeah.
shoulder for 2 years.
Oh, yep. It happened. It lasts for 2 years. Mine lasted for 2 years as well.
And so it was PT, and it's this is why I say it, because I assumed I had sort of like a jammy type of sliding door, and I just assumed this dang door, like it caused some sort of injury, and I stopped using the shoulder, right?
Mm-hmm.
Literally stop reaching for things in the cabinet, and that's what freezes it up, right?
Yeah, yeah. You need to kind of work out that scar tissue and that muscular, that tissue
Yeah.
that's trying to protect your shoulder and break
Hmm.
that up. Yeah.
Interesting. I was actually told, like, oh, this could potentially lead to, um, what's the surgery in the shoulder? It's very common.
Oh, yeah. Rotator cuff
Rotator
surgery.
cuff surgery
Mm-hmm.
to that extent. And
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose it could be, but I would even venture to say that most women would not connect those dots.
No, no, it is only becoming more increasingly aware of like the estrogen levels that is causing it. And so, yeah, in fact, I didn't know about that until about 2 years ago myself and was reading a book and I'm like, oh, this makes a lot of sense now.
Oh
So,
my
um,
goodness.
yeah, yeah. And Chris, also like some women, I think menopause is having a moment. It seems like it's being talked about more often, whereas like my parents' generation didn't really talk about it. And I don't know if it's because we're more in tune or just more intuitive about our bodies now,
Hmm.
or it could be a combination of being more intuitive because my mom was like, oh, yeah, I just ignored those symptoms. I just didn't even think about them.
Hmm.
But maybe we're becoming more intuitive, but also the symptoms might be more pronounced because there's more toxins in our lifestyle too, than ever before from
Hmm.
like, 20 years ago, environmental toxins in our food, and just things like that could be causing more symptoms. So,
Right. And I think it's super important. Like, as my podcast has developed, more topics are connected than the initial set of topics that I had set out to release in
mhm.
connection with the podcast. So I think also people like you talking about it publicly is very important, because even the thing about the frozen shoulder, I just assumed it was like an orthopedic thing. I never ever would have connected that to menopause ever. And the sleeplessness I think we hear about, but this information and putting it out there is helpful for even one person, right?
Mhm.
I mean, if I'd have known this maybe 40 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 5 years ago, what would you suggest? Should we be talking to our OBGYN, our PCPs? Like, who would be
Yeah.
the correct practitioner to talk to about this?
Yeah, right now it's actually there's not a lot of medical education around menopause. They are changing that. So
Hmm.
I just found out recently that the Menopause Society, or there's other like organizations that are trying to add it to the curriculum when doctors go through their training, because
Hmm.
they don't study it, and they don't have the issue, and the real issue is that they're not even tested to keep their board exams current. There are no questions about menopause in there currently, so that is all changing. And I think we're starting to get more research and more funding for women's health, because we're not just little men, right? We're women, and we have different brains and different
Totally.
hormones and different chemistries. So they are starting to study women's health, and starting to get more funding for that, which is great. It's needed. So I've looked forward. I'm very hopeful about the future. But for me, how I just kind of started researching on my own
Right.
and started reading books, and that's where I would really start, is reading books, and maybe starting to follow some people on Instagram to learn more
Hmm.
about. And you can even listen to podcasts too. So that's kind of how I started hearing about different, like ways to mitigate the symptoms of menopause. So yeah, I mean, it's all like kind of being self-taught right now. But I think there's gonna be more in the future.
Right.
So
Just recently I interviewed Dr. Johnny Bowden, and he's a nutritionist, and his
hmm
focus is also in with functional medicine. And so
hmm
he's addressing the nutritional parts, but also the toxins. So can we kind
Yes.
of roll back to what you mentioned about toxins that are
Hmm.
potentially also affecting us aside from age and, you know, hormones, right?
Right,
What are
right.
the environmental factors? What are we, is it makeup? Is it food? Is it being outside, being inside? Can you share
Yes.
about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you had mentioned being outside. I think that is one of the healthiest things you can do is
Mhm.
get morning sunlight. That'll help your mitochondria and set off like different hormones that go into a process there just by getting 10 minutes of sunlight. So if you have a dog, or even if you don't have a dog, just get out in the sun in the morning,
Mhm.
and that will set off a lot of triggers for the rest of your day. But going back to mitochondria, they are like, the functioning of the cell can be affected by these toxins in the environment. And yeah, there are beauty products that have that. So if you're putting makeup on your skin, that is actually being absorbed. Your skin is your largest organ, so it's like absorbing. So you want to make sure you have clean products. And I know you can't do everything all at once. So what I did is I started out with food, like using food as
Mhm.
medicine, and really trying to up my cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, kale, and greens, leafy greens.
Mhm.
If you have access to a farmer in your area, like see what they have on their list. And it's
Right.
actually probably cheaper to go to a farmer than go to the grocery store these days.
Yes.
So that's always I always think like back to when I was a little kid and we would go visit my grandparents. They lived till their mid 90s, and
Mhm.
they always had prevention magazines sitting on the table, like the coffee table, that little book. And it was I just would read that. And that was the first time I was so fascinated by food actually can change your cells and change your energy.
Mhm.
And like, I really, at a young age, I was like, wow, no one really talks about this, but this really does make sense. If you eat something that can, change how you combat toxins. So, that whole like being able to detox. One of my favorite supplements is sulforaphane, and
Mhm.
it comes from the broccoli family. So you could eat a lot of broccoli sprouts or eat a lot of broccoli, but you could also just take, the sulforaphane. And I think that is, a really good way to detox from lifestyle toxins. So, and it may not work for everybody, but, certainly if your detox pathways are jammed up, that might be a good one.
Yeah. I would say the first time I heard about sort of I had a friend, or I have a friend, she's a nutritionist, and one of the things that she said was you can, if you're going to be kind of naughty with your food or even like the toxins in your body, find a food that combats it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You need, like she mentioned it to me and it made a lot of sense. You don't have to eliminate everything. And clearly, menopause is going to be something women can't avoid, you know, not to be morbid, but unless you die young, I guess. But we're all headed that way, all women. Um, and I like that you're talking about this. I certainly don't know much about it.
Yeah, and I love how, yeah, you mentioned like starting small, and
Mhm.
that's what I did. I started with food, and then it eventually became like the products that I'm using and that I'm putting on my skin and then I'm putting, on my body. So it was this transformation. But you know what happens? Like your microbiome, when you start to eat healthier, you
Mhm.
actually don't crave as much as the bad stuff. It's like your microbiome starts to develop and it becomes a little bit better when you're
Mhm.
eating healthier foods. So you kind of can I'm not saying it's easy every time, but you're on this like path, and it kind of like just sounds better to have a salad with chicken versus like fries and a burger. But yeah, I mean, I always believe like you need a little bit of everything as well. I call it the flexitarian diet, like just being flexible with what I'm doing and not, eliminating one particular food over another. Right. And I do follow for myself, it's the Mediterranean diet. So get a lot of healthy omega-3 fatty acids. So like fish and lots of legumes and leafy greens, and also like omega-3s from the fish and oil, olive oil, like high quality olive oil, if you can find it. So.
Yeah, that's great advice. Going back to what you were saying about not craving certain things. So in my own experience, right, I lost 30 pounds at my later 30s. And it's amazing when you start to make these small adjustments, how eventually you're not craving the sugars. I talk to people who don't believe that, and I'm like, trust me when I tell you that 20 years ago, if you had told me in 20 years you're gonna love beets, I would have been like, beets. I don't eat beets at all. But the same way you stop craving the sugars, you start craving that kind of stuff. So I mean, I don't know if you have this answer, but is it just like a habit, a routine? Because I literally crave beets, the taste of dirt.
Yeah, no, I love, so beets are so good for you. It's so good for liver support. It's like one of my go-to vegetables. Like seriously, I don't eat it enough, really. I mean, I try to do it once a week, but still, I think you could eat beets every single day, and it's just so good. And it also supports, we're talking about the liver, and it can support your detox pathways as well. So keep eating those beets.
Yeah, I love beets, and I don't know why the taste of dirt is a craving. It's amazing, and people who don't do it don't get it, right?
Yeah,
that those small adjustments really lead to pretty massive results. I wish people would listen about this, eating well thing. That it's just eventually doesn't become as hard as it seems.
Yes.
What else can women be sort of adopting into their diets that maybe that would help them? So I'm not going to assume they're not doing it, but what helps us get into this phase of our lives?
Yeah. Well, I think, so one thing that might help certain people that are data motivated is to wear a continuous glucose monitor. They call it a CGM for short. It's just a little, like circle dot that goes into your arm, and it's a filament that reads your blood sugar levels. And one of the things that happens when you get into menopause is that you're more insulin sensitive. So looking at like how food will impact your blood sugar levels. So that might help as you're, and what I do is when I'm wearing it, you wear it for usually 2 weeks at a time. And you can enter in on the app, you enter in what you're eating. So if you get a large spike, it's like, okay, I realize that I shouldn't eat potatoes by themselves with an IPA beer, like don't do that, right?
Frozen beers.
Yeah, several, years ago, it's like, don't do that, so don't have the naked carbs, so to speak. And so just kind of learning what foods might be better for you, because see, everyone is so bio individual, right? And I could say, sweet potatoes, those are like one of my favorite sources of fiber, and also keeps me full and doesn't spike my blood sugar, but it may react differently to some other people. So using a device like a CGM might help people determine what food works well for them, especially in the different changes. But yeah, it's so simple to me. The less processed food that you eat, and the like things that our grandparents would not recognize as food, don't put that in your body, right? So they lived a less processed lifestyle, cooking whole foods, and even like some raw, like you could have raw vegetables if your stomach can tolerate that,
right?
And getting just, less processed. So yeah.
Absolutely. I look at processed food because I've had people ask me like, well, what is processed food? Which is scary. Like, people wouldn't know what
Yeah.
processed food is. And I say, well, generally, if it's in a bag, a can, or any kind of packaging, that's probably
Yes,
gonna
that's
fall in,
right.
that's gonna fall into the processed food because you know that to store it literally for more than a couple of months, which is not
Hmm.
normal, right? Your fruits and
Hmm.
veggies and meats and proteins should go bad, right? If you don't eat
That's
them,
right.
and then to top it all off, if it's in a can or a bag or a box or whatever, it's loaded with sugar or salt to preserve it. And it's really that simple. And
Hmm.
it's what they say about the outside of the groceries, like the outside walls of the grocery store is where you should be.
Hmm.
Not the
Yes,
center is where you should be shopping.
that's
Um,
right.
so if I don't think I've covered this in the podcast yet, but if you're eating processed foods, you know, what is what can you expect from that over a long period of time?
Yeah, I think that it can be different for for individual, like, certain individuals, just like eating
Right.
healthy food can be. But, for the most part, if you're feeling lethargic after a meal, that's what I feel usually if I eat
Hmm.
processed foods. It's like I feel like stuck to the ground, feet stuck to the ground, and just really tired and
Hmm.
not having a lot of energy. And sometimes I even get headaches too. So being aware, like paying attention to those signs that your body gives you, hopefully might give you motivation to change your diet. Now, I know that not everyone has time to cook. And I get that. But there are some ways, like I know there's like meal services out there now that will ship everything to you and try to make it easy. And some of it's already cut up for you. And then also another idea is you could on Sunday or pick a day to just meal prep and you cook or you chop everything up on the same day and then get it all done and then just store it in the fridge and then it's ready, it's on hand. And that also helps if you have cravings, you're like, oh well, I'm not having these cravings anymore. I could just go to my fridge and grab what I need to in order to like not have those cravings. And usually eating every 4 hours is good so that you prevent those cravings. Yeah,
And that's
just
good for
to
the
not go to the processed food.
yeah, and that's good for the metabolism as well, right? Is
Yeah, yeah.
just eat I think I mean that's how I eat, small and frequent. Um,
Yeah. And there's also a lot of talk about intermittent fasting too. So in the morning, I usually do my fasting in the morning.
mhm.
It just helps with cellular turnover and like keeps your brain sharp, I guess, and also cleans up the system, right? Doesn't bog down the system if you're always eating. But when you're entering menopause, so just be aware, like if you still have your cycle, I
Yeah.
would be like not doing the intermittent fasting when you're on your cycle necessarily,
Okay.
unless you do feel okay with it. But
Okay.
yeah, just being aware that it can, change your hormones a little bit. So
Mhm.
just paying attention if it still works for you during your cycle or not. But yeah, overall, I think, some people like intermittent fasting. The only thing that I would say too is like, if you are intermittent fasting, it's hard to get your protein requirements specifically. So that's another thing. That's why I kind of cycle in and out of it just so that I can still get enough protein during the day. Yeah.
Yeah, and intermittent fasting and eating better generally is good for the mood, which is something that women are affected by
Hmm.
in menopause. So what are some symptoms we can look out for in terms of mood?
Yes. So, like the symptoms that are commonly shared with me are anxiety and, depression. So, like, for me, one of my symptoms when I was drinking regular caffeinated coffee is that I would just have this like unusual anxiety. And I'm like,
Hmm.
oh, wow, like I'm not able to like break down the coffee anymore like I used to. So I started to support my liver more and was able to go back on caffeine. But for a long time, for like a whole year, I had to just stop. drinking caffeinated coffee. I would do the decaf, right? Because I just love the bitter taste of coffee. But yeah, so things like that. And also, the mood swings are normal. I love to exercise. This is like the number one thing you can do to change your mood. So rather than go to a pill, I get outside and do a walk or go for a hike. Getting out in nature. Also, strength training is so good for your mental health as well. I love, strength training because as you start to age, you lose muscle tone. So being able to restore your muscle tone and keep the muscle tone in the gym, or, I love Pilates too. Like there's so many different ways to get it. And also they've got lots of studies showing that yoga can improve your mood too. Like if it includes some meditation part of the yoga as well.
Right.
So I always look to those options first and see if that moves the needle. And sometimes it could just be a placebo effect. If you think that yoga is helping your mood, sometimes it really does. So your mind is very powerful, as you know.
Yeah. We talk about that a lot on this podcast, about just mental strength leads to emotional strength. And I also want to remind viewers and listeners that I think sometimes we can get in our own heads about, I don't have time for a yoga class, or I don't have time for Pilates, or I don't have time to go to the gym. But we live in a world where all of that's already available on YouTube, that you don't have to leave your house to do. And there is so much that comes out of not just yoga, but breath work when you're doing yoga. And I really believe in 10 minutes of breath work literally reshifts your day. So I really, really, really want to remind people that it's not as big as you think it is. Let's see, I have a quote on that. It says, fear makes a wolf bigger than it is. So, you know what? Sit in front of your TV with YouTube on and do some yoga and breath work.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah, I think I think when you start creating those habits and those routines for yourself, you start to see the impact that it can make. Again, I believe in small leads to big. Going back to diet, in my own journey, I lost 30 pounds, and I did it in such small ways. I always go back to the story. I used to have my coffee every morning with three teaspoons of sugar.
Wow.
Teaspoons of sugar. So that's what, like a tablespoon and a half, maybe? Right?
Yeah.
And then again, I've talked about this before, but I love Hawaiian rolls. I love Hawaiian rolls. I don't know what it is with three, but I would have three at dinner. And the way I changed those, it was literally like brushing my teeth. Three teaspoons of sugar in my coffee, 3 Hawaiian rolls at dinner, a sandwich for lunch. So I did it in very small ways. I took away 1 teaspoon. I had 1 slice of bread with my sandwich, and then I had 2 Hawaiian rolls. And eventually I scaled back. I had lettuce wrap sandwiches versus any kind of bread. Doesn't mean I don't have bread, but I think that those small adjustments led me to shedding 30 pounds. And what's most important is feeling great.
Oh,
And in
yeah.
my late 30s, having more energy than I'd ever had. And I was already energetic, but I had more energy. And I think the turning point for me is that I'd made those adjustments, and they were so small, I almost hadn't even noticed it until I sat down and had a carb fast.
Okay.
You know?
And then you noticed how you feel
Oh my
afterwards.
God. I was literally dragging ass. I was like, why do I feel this way? And then it was very easy to see. I did this today. And I mean, I went all out. I mean, I'm of Cuban descent. Have you ever been to a Cuban party?
Yeah. No, I haven't, but it's
Okay.
like Carb City, right?
Oh my God, it's Carb City, and it's a lot of sugar. We eat pastelitos, we eat bocaditos, we eat all of that stuff. And I went all in. at that party. And I think that's where it clicked for me. And I'm like,
Mhm.
I don't like the way I feel, you
Mhm.
know? And so I
Right.
think the combination of that and maybe not being active and then going into menopause is,
Mhm.
I always think that you work on and you fix the things you can. Menopause is going to happen,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Um,
Right.
is there blood work that gives us markers, indicators, or
Yeah.
what our hormone levels are looking like? Is there blood work for that?
Right. So, okay. So this is such a big topic. I'm so glad you asked about it because your hormones are this like symphony. So, at one point your estrogen might be this beautiful violin solo, in the symphony, and it's working so well with all the other instruments that, you're in perfect harmony. But there's such a change in your levels from day to day that it really is hard to look at blood work, right? You
Okay.
you really kind of have to go based on your symptoms.
Okay.
And so blood work is a little bit iffy, but I love tracking my blood work in general. Like I've been tracking it for, let's see, 6 or 7 years,
Okay.
for other things like my heart health and things like that. So I do like blood work as a baseline, so you kind of know what your baseline is, and then from there, and also when you're testing your blood work for hormones, they say to test it on day 3 or 4 of your cycle if you are still cycling. And if you don't have a cycle, then it wouldn't matter when you're testing.
Mhm.
But yeah, so the blood work can be different. Now, there's another test that's the dried urine. It's called a Dutch test. It's a dried urinalysis test of your hormones.
Mhm.
And supposedly that's more accurate, but it's like almost so much detail. You really need to have a good practitioner that knows how to interpret the results. So
Right.
those are your options. And I do think it is good to test and know kind of what baseline is, and then that will help you if you are deciding to do hormone replacement therapy, bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. Then you can dial in like your levels. So if you're on a certain strength of estrogen and a certain strength of progesterone, and even adding in a little testosterone, you may use that Dutch test to determine if your levels are optimal or not.
Right. So I'm assuming, like any illness, disease, you could be asymptomatic, right? You could never have a
Mm-hmm.
symptom and go through menopause, but what would be considered crisis? Like, what would be
Mm.
the worst case scenario? Because even on cycles, right? You've got women that don't feel a thing, and then you've got other women that
Right.
can't get out of bed and
Yeah.
feel horrible and have migraines and all kinds
Right.
of pains and need a heating pad or a cold compress. Like it's just like you know, gosh,
Right.
we get it all, right? Like
Yeah, I know.
childbearing, cycles, menopause. So what would be like a worst case scenario? And I don't
Oh,
like to go in that
yeah.
direction, but what would
Well,
be a worst case scenario?
yeah, and you just pointed out some of those worst case scenario symptoms. So, yeah, I mean, there's going to be days where, like for me, the one thing that I really try to prioritize is my sleep. It's a foundational like habit that you need to, for me, I require, 8 hours of sleep. That's where I feel my most optimal. But some people may only require 7 or even 6. But like, I really try to prioritize my sleep because that again is a trigger effect for setting off your hormones throughout the day.
Right.
But yeah, like I think the worst case scenario for me is like the sleepless night, which leads to a migraine, which leads to like pain in my back for some reason, and like other things that might pop up. But yeah, like uh, having a supportive spouse might be good. Like if you're really having a lot of like pain. I always like people always say marriage is 50-50, but for me, I think sometimes it's got to be like 70-30. Like I'll tell my husband, like, look, I am having, women day, or I'm having a, female day,
Female day.
and I need you to carry more of the weight today. Can you please do that? And, they're sometimes understanding and will help you out during that. But, yeah. And also I think if you're having those moments and days, call a friend, talk to someone that you trust, or even, some people like to journal if they're more, like, if they don't like to be open about it, they can journal about it and just get out all of their feelings on the paper. So yeah, in those crisis modes, it's really hard to cope, but try to find some gratitude in the day. Maybe that'll help too, and do some journaling.
When it comes to menopause, are those systems persistent? Like, are they happening all the time? Do they coincide with what would have been a cycle? Like, how does it work?
Yeah, the mechanism of things.
Yeah,
Yes.
to know these things. I don't know if I'm there yet. I don't think I am, but
Yeah.
we talk about perimenopause maybe, but where, like, how persistent are these symptoms?
Yeah, well, we can talk about the brain first.
Okay.
In perimenopause, there's a lot of different chemicals going on in the brain, like the chemicals are changing, and which could lead to, feelings of depression sometimes, or, not being worthy enough, or even like insecure and not having enough, sometimes if you don't have enough testosterone, you might not feel motivated to go to the gym or motivated to do anything about your health. So, things are happening in the brain that might cause less motivation for you. And then other parts of the body, for instance, symptoms in genitourinary symptoms, if you, have to pee more frequently, or if you like jump and all of a sudden there's like a little bit of trickle coming out, things like that are caused by your estrogen's impact on your female organs there. So yeah, I don't know how it all like works into this, like, like when there's the symphony going and it's beautiful and everything is magically just working. Yeah. I don't think that happens very often, right? So it's like you have to kind of just, deal with it, I guess, and know that you will get through the period of time. So
yeah, absolutely. And going back to like diet, mobility, and then what's literally happening to your body, and the toxins, I think that the more junk we have in our bodies, then perhaps it also becomes that much more difficult to even figure out what's happening.
Right.
And I even wonder, I think we might have talked about this before, but how all of that plays into a woman's body even before perimenopause or menopause, right? Younger women that would be fertile, ready to have babies. I'm hearing things even in the younger age groups of having trouble conceiving, or all kind. I can't remember what polycystic.
Yeah, polycystic ovary syndrome, PCOS.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
and
I know it's happening.
Yeah, I mean, I had my first child a really long time ago. I don't remember hearing about that back then. Now, maybe I just didn't know anybody who was affected by it, but I wonder, do women who have those complications earlier in life during their fertile years, maybe, do they tend to have more issues down the road as well?
I think that could happen. Absolutely. I think that if you did experience some of that earlier on, it could definitely manifest and show up later. But also, women that had their period early, like say at like age 10 or 11, they might experience menopause early as well. So, or if you had your period later, you might go into menopause later. But yeah, it's so bio-individual. And I love like working with, functional medicine practitioner. And some people like naturopaths, and that's fine too. But, working with someone who really understands women's health and, really understands what's going on. And if you are interested, so most OBGYNs are still very scared of prescribing bioidentical hormones. And for me, estrogen was really important to me. And so is progesterone in order for me to sleep, right? So like I kind of needed it because I'm just in decline. So I found a doctor who was able, who was comfortable prescribing that. And if you are looking for a practitioner, one of the first things I did is I called I called a pharmacy, like a compounding pharmacy, and asked, which doctors are prescribing bioidentical hormones, and then that kind of led me down the path of, who to speak to. That way I don't have to, beg for things that I should already, not have to beg for. But yeah, that's just one little tip. And then I always think too, like supplementing before doing anything else too. So like before doing bioidentical hormones, the number one thing that helps me sleep was magnesium glycinate. Okay. There's lots of different magnesiums, but magnesium glycinate before bed is just a game changer. It's a miracle. I don't know how it works, but the other thing I think, so there's 3 supplements and I'm like not going to go overboard on supplements, but there's just 3 that I think are super important. Getting enough vitamin D, and that'll help. See, most people don't know that vitamin D is a hormone, right? So it can help. It can help set off other, processes in your hormones if you have optimal levels. And most people are not getting enough vitamin D. I prefer to get it through the sun, but if I am not able to during the winter, or if you're in Seattle, for instance, you can supplement vitamin D, and that helps. So vitamin D, magnesium glycinate for sleep, and then also omega-3 fish oil, fatty acids. So one of the other common symptoms of menopause is brain fog. You're just not able to come up with the right words, or you can't remember someone's name. Like for the life of you, you've worked with them for 3 years and you're just like, what is their name? I don't even remember their last name to go in and type in something. Or if you walk into a room and you don't know why you walked into the room, like, why did I come into this room? So, brain fog, even if you do have a healthy lifestyle or healthy diet, and, things like that, you can still experience this brain fog. And the omega-3 fish oil will help you restore some of that. I mean, I just think that it works really well on the brain specifically. There's also a supplement you could take. Mushrooms, not magic mushrooms or anything, but lion's mane. I love lion's mane for brain function and brain health too. So yeah, that's a big symptom that we didn't even cover, but I could spend a whole episode on brain fog.
Talk about brain fog. We've got a few minutes. Do you want to talk about that? Because I think, we've got to function, right? And I think the brain is the most important thing to keep everything moving and working, which is where you and I met, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Where we were at I guess it's a seminar on brain function.
On brain function and neuroplasticity. Yeah, absolutely. It's, for me, I think the brain fog is so real, and it affects women that are working right now. Like, women that are in their 50s and 60s that are working right now. Like, actually, my company has a menopause resource group. And I think you're going to start to see some of this moving forward because, having that conversation with your boss and being like, well, maybe rather than me speaking up in meetings, I'd rather communicate via email because that's how my brain is functioning this way. So just, having alternatives and being open about like your struggle with, recall and mental function. So it's, if it happens, like kind of having a plan and, really maybe communicating a different way instead. But also I think that what really helps with that neuroplasticity is finding new hobbies, potentially, maybe gardening, something that you haven't done before, or, oh gosh, what kind of hobbies do you like, Chris? There's like so many different ones. But.
I have 1,000, but I'm a musician for one. I run the podcast. Probably 90% on my own. I love to garden because my food source is so important to me that I'm
Hmm.
very committed to that. And then I love to bike. So I'm always
Oh yeah, biking. Yeah, that's a really like healthy habit too. Yeah,
biking.
biking and even like if you don't think you're an artist, but you go to a couple art classes or even a dance class,
Hmm.
I think that somehow will change your brain and give you like a new perspective on life too. And that
Right,
could in turn help with brain fog.
right,
It could. So
right.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a really great suggestion because I know that in my own world, I think what keeps me sane is that I have my practice, which is accounting, finance, M&A. So it's one side of the brain, and then I'm very
Hmm.
artistic and creative, so I'm using the other side of the brain, and I think that that just keeps. First of all, it keeps you very engaged in life to
Hmm.
have things that I don't want to say force, but have you using all sides of your brain. And I think
Yes.
that the creative side, regardless of what your profession is, and maybe your profession is being creative, but I think the creative side is so important. And then I have the
Yeah.
physical aspects that I, again, I don't want to say force because I like doing it, but
Hmm.
I think, I don't know, I just think mobility is so important.
Yes.
and
Oh
and
yeah, for
and
sure.
sleep also. So I agree with you 1,000% on the sleep thing because I always say that sleep and water are like the most underrated physical needs we
Hmm.
have. We had sleep specialists, who you and I have talked about before on the podcast, and she talks about how we've lost our skill of sleeping. Like, who would have
Hmm.
thought sleeping was a skill? Like, the way that she
Yeah.
explains it makes a lot of sense, but I know for me, 7 hours is enough. But I
Hmm.
think, we need sleep to restore. And if you understand what's happening to the body when you're sleeping, I, I know for me, I was like, what? I'm going to get to sleep because I need that because I would wake up with brain fog and I would wake up
Hmm.
tired. I would wake up so tired that I'd be like, how many hours before I get to sleep again?
Oh yeah, that is
It was
such
literally,
a strong feeling, isn't it?
yeah,
Like you're
it
wanting just to
created
go
a
back
lot
to
of,
bed.
yeah, I
Anxiety.
was very
Right.
anxious during that time. Um,
Hmm.
and I worry sometimes because I think that a person's first reaction, because I think we've been conditioned to think this way, is to go to a doctor and give me a pill to fix this.
Hmm. Hmm.
But I believe our bodies tell us what we need, and the earth
Very
provides.
intuitive.
And the earth
Yeah,
provides.
that's absolutely. Oh my gosh, yes, that is right. It
Yeah.
is. It's so important, and like yeah, the sleep. There's so many distractions in our world today, and we've never been on our screens as much as we have too. Like
Mhm.
whether it be like you're scrolling on your phone or you're on your computer, so you're receiving all this blue light from your computer, and that's in
Mhm.
turn messing with your cortisol, which you want to downregulate that as you're about to fall asleep. So
Yeah.
there's just a lot of distractions now, and even with people who are not able to turn their brain off, and like I was thinking, someone asked me the day, like, what keeps you up at night? Well, nothing work related keeps me up at night, okay, because that should be handled at work, and like I shouldn't have anxiety about this, that, or the other. What
Right.
should keep me up at night is like real health problems, like it is my health at risk, or things like real problems that
Yeah.
like that really could really put you in a like a worrisome state. But anyway, I just think that yeah, sleep, like you mentioned, sleep is so important, and I'm glad you had a guest on. I'm going to listen to that episode for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. She's pretty great. She runs sleep as a skill, and I remember coming across her thinking, sleep is a skill. And then when I learned a little bit more, I was like, ooh, yeah, that's been me before. And I mean, I used to fall asleep with the TV on, leave it on sleep, and it's actually just been recently that I stopped doing that because I realized This is what's great about the podcast. Like it's
Yeah.
just me asking questions about things that apply to me, and then it just helps other people. But
Right.
what is happening in the brain when that blue light continues, and when
Mm-hmm.
all of that sound is still being fed into your brain, so it would
Mm-hmm.
make sense that you would not wake up refreshed, because that time between awake and falling asleep, like the sleepiness part of I'm falling asleep, is so critical to us.
Mm-hmm.
I have an
Yeah.
episode on that too, and I learned that on the podcast. I didn't know that before, but how critical that little nugget of time. And so if you've got the TV
Mm-hmm.
on, you know,
Yeah, I know. And if you really want to geek out, you can wear an Aura ring. I wear it on my finger here, and get a sleep score every day. I've got 4 years worth of data, so I can see where my menopause struggles were 4 years ago and how that's improved, and even it tracks your heart rate variability, which is so cool, right?
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, the data doesn't lie. If I have, when you get older, like the ability to process alcohol becomes a little bit less and less too. And I notice if I indulge, one night, then that will absolutely impact my sleep. So, just being very mindful of things like that. Right. But
yeah,
yeah, you're right. The blue light before bed, not good. You want, like I wear blue light blocking glasses if I do happen to watch TV, but at night, it's just kind of a habit we've gotten into, just turning down the lights. And it's super simple.
yeah.
You just turn all the lights off, or turn them down, and, start to like get your brain into sleep mode. And, some people like to read a book before bed, and that like signals wanting to fall asleep. So
Yeah.
yeah.
My husband loves, I love natural light. I have all my windows open during the day. But then
Yeah.
at night, you know, it's always been like a thing between us of he likes these like white hospital lights inside the house. And then he
No.
doesn't like that I have soft white lighting in the house. And I'm like, we're just not supposed to be that alert and active as we're having dinner, cleaning up,
Yeah.
getting ready for bed. And it's always been this thing. And he's like, well, I don't like the soft white lights. And I'm like, well, I don't like the bright white lights. Like, I don't even know what it's called, those bright white lights. Like if you
I don't either. The LED, is that what they're called? Yeah.
well, I think
I don't know.
LED lights have proven to cause sleep issues, correct? Have you heard
Yep.
of that?
Yeah, I have heard. So yeah, and that's not what our grandparents grew up with, is the LED
Mhm.
lights. They didn't have that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, it's supposed to be sleepy and darker and
hmm
not darker, but like warmer and more comfortable and more settling in. And, I could just see in a house how many things are like, I don't know if it's the right term, but sleep disruptors
yeah.
to
Yeah,
not,
there are.
yeah. So how can we
Yeah.
find you, Alicia? I know where to find you, but where can we find you?
Yes. So I'm L underscore the health coach
Okay.
on Instagram. So you
Hmm.
can follow my page and, get some tips, through my page. And then you can also contact me through that page as well. Yeah.
Awesome.
And I also have a website. It's www.cellmastery.com.
Cell Cell.
Yeah, CELL mastery.com. But yeah, L is EL underscore the health coach
Right.
on
And you can
Instagram.
help you can help anybody, not just ladies.
I'm a health coach for anyone that is looking, like, I'm going to be your biggest champion on what you're looking to change. So, we don't go into psychotherapy or like analyzing the past. We're looking forward to the future and seeing what new person you want to become. And that's what a health coach will do, be your biggest champion to get to your goals.
That's awesome. I'm so glad you joined me today.
I'm
And
so glad to connect with you.
definitely, definitely. And, I hope that this podcast really gets in front of people who need to hear it and are just that willing and committed to their health and, you know, just moving forward with it, especially women.
Yeah.
All
I
right,
know.
Joe,
I know.
thank
Thank
you.
you so much, Chris. Have a
Thank
great day.
you. Thanks for your interest in sticking around to watch or listen to my podcast, dedicated to providing tools and resources to help you claim and live your best life. If you're loving these conversations, make sure you hit that bell to subscribe or follow and never miss an episode of the Chris Senise Podcast. Don't forget to tap the like and share it with someone who needs a little inspiration today. Let's grow this community of curious, driven minds together.